All right, what's going on, everybody? We're back to do the last enad, or last row of numbers of the Samos Cup. And before we get going with part 3, we're going to take a look at my shirt here to even understand why we're learning the alphabet. Because a lot of people don't understand. We see hydrogen reacts with oxygen to form water. And A is the affinity or force. That's the attraction between the molecules. G is the formation energy. This is Xi is the extent of reaction at constant pressure and temperature. And this defines the reaction existence of these molecules. And this applies to hydrogen and oxygen just as it applies to man and woman, as Buchner said. So this equation defines the so-called formation energy of you and I. G is the formation energy, H is the enthalpy, T is the temperature, S is the entropy. And this all comes from Clausius. So if we go to my thermodynamics section, we see that Clausius is the one who founded the mechanical theory of heat. His volume 1 was published in 90A, and this is volume 2. And these two books define the laws of the universe. So if we go to Clausius, this is one of the original copies from 1879. It cost me, my most expensive book, cost me $600. Clausius, in his The Energy of the Body, again, this can be the body of a child or the body of a hydrogen molecule. He says, on regards to terminology, this is the equation for the internal energy. It's the enthalpy plus the ergon, which is J. He says that Thomson, in a paper published in 1851 called U, mechanical energy of the body in a given state. Kirchhoff called it the function of activity. Zunner called it the interior heat. And then Clausius says this doesn't make sense because it doesn't, only part of the quantity stands for heat actually existing in the body, i.e. the vis viva. So vis viva means living force. So this is where we have a terminology confusion. This term eventually got disabused from science because it doesn't, the idea of a falling rock having living force doesn't make sense. So we have etymological confusion here. That's one of the reasons why we're learning the origin of words right now. So he says he eventually settled on Thomson's term energy for you. So if you want to understand your existence and how you came into the universe, you have to learn chemical thermodynamics, but then you also have to learn the terminology of words. So if you look up energy, this is the A66 version of HMLpedia, which I wrote before I got into, when I was getting into alphanumerics. We see that it's the erga from Homer, which means loose. We think it means work. Okay, that's not archived yet, but it comes from Heraclitus, and it comes from the word an-ergon. So we want to know what does this mean before it became ergon and ergon. So that's one of the reasons we're learning the origin of letters right now, so we can understand where this comes from in Egyptian language. So in last video we were talking about the poles. This diagram gives a little bit better explanation, because we were talking about the Polaris pole and we were talking about the ecliptic pole and how two of them are out of alignment. So this is the diagram here. We see this is equatorial pole or Polaris pole. It's always constant when someone's looking in the Earth rotates, but this Polaris star is always constant. But the ecliptic pole or I've got these. This is the Polaris pole. Or I might have this labeled backwards. So I've got pole labeling confusion here, but the point of this is that the pole that goes out the center of the Earth is always the same, but then there's what is called the precession of the equinoxes. And so the Earth kind of rotates like a top around, like a spinning top, and it completes a rotation once every so many years. So the Egyptians believed that these two poles aligned, that the Jed would be raised towards the Ankh, and that they would, in January 8th, they would be the same. That's why these are aligned together. Two poles aligned, two poles aligned. And here we see Osiris as the Jed. Is out of alignment by 22.5 degrees. So at Christmas time, or these in January 8th, they try to raise the Jed so it aligns with the Ankh, or the star of the pole star. And here we see this is the ecliptic, and there's the pole star. And the diagram here is trying to say that the Jed of Osiris is getting raised and making the two poles become aligned. And so here we see all the letters. Letter P, these two, the Jed and Ankh. Letter R is the ram horn, and then the O is the I. So that's why we have Xi, O, P, Q, R. So we've done that. Now, speaking about enads, this is one of the ciphers. These are all the 111 ciphers. So enad in Greek means 9, and the sum of the letters equals 111. So this 111 is what Herodotus calls the sacred Egyptian writing. He says that King Sesoteris left these pillars in Syria, Palestine area, and then he saw one of these that was carved on the shoulder of one of these pillars with an inscription in sacred Egyptian script that said, "I won this land with my shoulders." So if we look this up in Greek, script is grammata, Ira is sacred, which it's 10 plus 100 plus 1 equals 111, and then Egypta is this spelled like this. And we also know that there's Ira right there, I-R-A, this is the sacred writing, and then in Hebrew, letter A is called Aleph, and it's also 111. So here we see the same translation of the same. This is Herodotus 206, and it says, I saw the sacred characters. And it's read like this: Grammata, Ira, Ai, Gyptia. You also see the word polon here, which we looked at. Polon is 300. These are the main sciences, they said, that were taught to the Greeks. The polon, geometry, and the sundial, which is the genome. So here we see where the pole star is 300, which equates to where Thoth makes the letters. And we also see this is the magic square of the sun, and all these rows equal 1 and 1, and the diagonals equal 1 on 1. We also note over here that Samson Maki said that we are told by Herodotus that the Kohen, or Egyptian priests, or men of learning in Egypt, informed him that the pole of the earth, which is this, and the pole of the ecliptic, or no, this is the ecliptic. This is why this gets confusing. So ecliptic is this one, and this is the pole of the earth. Formerly coincided. So we're going to look at that at Sampi. But one thing that's interesting, that Kohen here is spelled K-E-N. It comes from Egypt, and it equals 75. And then also the word for Catholic is also spelled with the same K. So the Hebrew Kohens and the Christian Catholics are both Egyptian religions-based words, and they both start with this letter K, which holds the pole star, this star. Okay, so now we're going to get to letter R. It is the 19th letter, value 100. This is the way this person drew this. It's the ram horn right here, the head of the ram, and that's his feet curled up and ready to headbutt someone. And this is the drone. This is the curl of the ram horn. Tomb UJ number tag 5300A, and it's the sun in the ram horn. So here we see 2,000 ram heads buried in Ramses II temple. So there's the sun in the ram horn, there's the curl, that's right there. This became this in Phoenician, and this became rho in Greek, and then R in Latin. And it's symbolic of the power of two rams headbutting, plus the sun in its most powerful state in summertime. And here we see one of the early Greek R's. There's two rams about to headbutt. Their feet are curled up right here, and this is their head. And there's the Tomb UJ number tag. There's someone drawing it, the curled ram horn. And here we see the ram constellation, which was viewed as the sun in the ram horn constellation, symbol of power. And then also we see that it's the source of the word battling ram. There's Egyptian battling ram. And it also became the curl on the red horn, a red crown. So that's the ram horn. The red color is a symbol of the blood of victory or power. It's called the Desh red crown. This is the V1 glyph. And then we also see the legged row Greek letter R. We see the R, but it also has a little curl on the top of it. So this person was trying to draw a ram headbutting plus an extra double curl here. That's its foot. Now the word R itself is rho, and it's R plus omega equals 900. So it's Ra in his boat traveling through Hathor, the Milky Way cow. So it's R omega is the name of R rho. So one conjecture I have is that although the symbol is two rams headbutting, and then which gives us names such as ram, the sound is the lion roaring. So it's like the power of two animals. The ram headbutting plus the lion roar combined makes them the emperor of Egypt, the most powerful person. So now we're going to get to letter S. So every night when the sun goes through the Milky Way, it has to battle this apep snake. And this is 20th letter value 200. And this became sigma like this. So here we see Ra-'s boat is going through the night, and when he gets to the 19th hour, which is gate 7, the 7th gate, and he has to battle this snake. It's called a pep. And we know that from Egyptian inscriptions that the domain of a pep is 440 cubits, and this is 440 in Egyptian. Those are the 100 symbols. 1, 2, 3, 400. Those are tens, so it's 440, the domain of a pep. So if Ra gets through this gate, then he's successful and he wins he's born again the next day. And we also know that Khufu pyramid is exactly 440 cubits side dimensions, and we've also decoded that 440 is the name of Osiris in Greek. So another thing that we know is that S is a symbol of power. So Zeus has a S in his name and also Z in his name. That means Zeus is powerful. He's more powerful than the 7th gate snake. So if we look over here, we see that the 7th gnome is where the iron is. So this is the symbol of the Set animal, which is why there's a Z in Zeus. And then S is this 200 letter snake. That's why Sesostris has 4 snakes in his names, which means he's twice as powerful as Zeus. It means he's more powerful than 4 7th gate snakes. And he also has R, the ram horn, in his name too. And then he has I as the Horus lightning bolt letter. So he's a super powerful Egyptian pharaoh. Now here we have the earliest forms of letter S in the Fayum alphabet, Isbet, where we see this snake-looking S, QRS, and then the Zayat stone has this Thoth monkey, ram horn, snake that looks like this, and that's letter Chi, the X. And there's some of the early development of S, where originally it was the snake, and then it got sort of shortened like this in Hebrew. Q, R, S, X in the Phoenician. So here we see, if we take the Isbet abecedarium, and then we overlay the I-14 hieroglyph, we get an exact match. So this proves or gives us evidence that letter S is based on a snake. And again, we have Q, Thoth monkey, R the ram horn, snake, and this is letter chi where the alphabet is born. And then also, one conjecture I posed 4 months ago is that the sound of S comes from this hissing of a snake. So that's my opinion of where S comes from presently. So now we're done with S. Now we're going to go to letter T. Okay, so we know that T comes from the TO map. That's the main model, T and O. Because people have made these different TO maps all the way in. The Europeans made all of, and for the last 2,000 years. So T is this and O is this. And this is the first Egyptian T that I found in blue, and it's on the Ramses 5-6 tomb from 3100 A. So we see the Nile here, T-shaped. This is the flood water is normal. This is the Nile when it's flooded, and became this Nile metaphasis TO, and then it became this with the O ocean. And then over here we see that's the Horus child being born over here, and this is Omega. This is Hathor birthing the new Horus sun child at about the thousand value. And this was just found this week. This is the green T. This is on the Tapered stela. So the way I've conjectured here is that this is the Nile flooded, and then after the flood recedes, it leaves the black soil, which allows the plants to grow. And the green part is the body of Osiris, which is baked into bread. And here we see the fresh water jug on top of the T. This is the Happy Water Nile jug, which is located. Happy's cave is buried right near Philly Island, or it's actually on the Big Island. So Happy's cave is on Big A Island. That's where this fresh water comes from, but technically it comes from the end bend of the Nile. And Happy's cave is right here. So this is Tapered stela. We see supposedly this is Horus Ra combination. There's letter T with all the food grown from the crops along it. And there's this is the verse, the backside, where we see a blue amen or tum. There's the same thing. So the water grows the plants along the T section of the Nile metaphasis. And then we see grapes right here. We know that Osiris became Dionysus, who is the grape god of the Greeks. So now we're going to get to Y. So these are known as the shoe support pillars. There's 4 of these holding up letter B, and we see there are 4 shoe support pillars here helping shoe hold up letter B. And later this became the Pythagorean Y, which is believed to be the difference between right actions and wrong actions. Now we're going to get to letter Phi. So letter Phi, 23rd letter. On the Samos Cup, it's drawn like this, and this is the hardwood stick. This is the softwood. So you put this in here and you spin it. Spin it like this, and it makes ashes right here. And then you take the ashes and put it in some dry grass and blow on it, and it starts a fire. So that's where letter Phi comes from. You can see it right here. You can see it on this is the pepper savannah, or this is the softwood here, hardwood, and it lights. This is when the jet is raised on January 8th, so we see the two of them aligned. Let's see if we can do this here. Okay, so all year long they're out of alignment like this. If everybody follows the laws, the 42 laws of Mott, they believe that this would help the two poles become aligned like this. This would happen this happens after January 8th, after letter sampi. So that's between, and then the fire drill Ptah lights the new sun. There's letter R, lights the new sun from the ashes. And this is where the story of the phoenix comes from. And here we see Ptah has one leg. He has one leg. That means he's a fire drill. He spins like this. This is from King Tut's tomb. So now we're going to do letter Chi, the cosmos letter. And here we see that Christians to this day make Chi X's on the church floors, and they write the letters in Greek and Latin, alphabet letters. And then here's the solar magic square with the letters forming a cross, which makes 888, which is the number of the sum of column 8 letters. So we're getting towards the end of the sequence of the periodic table, and this is where Horus is born. And then the phoenix is born after the Apis is raised over here. And here we also see that there's Orion, or Osiris, as the sun rotating through the sky. So that takes care of the cosmos letter. We'll talk about that more in a second, but this is letter Psi. So this is where Orion gets raised. Osiris is mummified, and then he raises as Orion in the November and December. So these are early forms of Greek Psi. Some of them they had 2 letters, but these are on the coffin lids, Egyptian coffin lids from 4000 A, and we see letter Psi's below is the risen. This is supposedly called Sa. I haven't figured out how this is decoded, but it means God Osiris risen as a star god in the space. Psi. So that is right here. So let's see if we can look at it. So, oh, I ruined the joke. But, so, the mummy gets raised like this, and then his sai is raised like the Orion constellation, and he comes back to animation. So now we've already talked a lot about Hathor is the cow. That's where omega comes from. That's the yoke. And that's the 26th letter. And periodically we're getting towards the end. You only have one more letter to go. Now we're going to get to sampi. It's the 27th letter, value 900, and we see that it's tilted like this. That means it's tilted out of alignment with the two poles are out of alignment, but on January 8th they're going to raise it. Here we see there's omega, 26th letter, and we see this is called Hathor on the horizon. Bet swallows the sun, bursts out the new sun, and the rays of light. This is, at one point these two goddesses were separate. One was the Milky Way, one was the stars, but eventually they got merged, so that Hathor became Hathor on the Horus on the horizon. It's kind of like the rays of the morning sunrise. And here we see the bottom fire drill again here of Phi. And here we see Hathor, the Apis, bull, and then Osiris, and then Lotus is born out. Lotus is the 28th letter on this sled here. So here we see the bull of the Apis with Osiris on its back before before Osiris gets risen. And also, incidentally, this is where the story of the Cadmus myth, when Europa rides off on a black and white bull, she's carried off to Europe, is a rewrite of Osiris being carried on the Apis bull. So that's where the name Europe comes from. Now here's the statue of the Apis Osiris statue in Emperor Hadrian's palace. So here we see the Jed out of alignment. Here we see Apis Osiris. Now this became this is called Serapis, but it became Sampi, and Sampi sums to 331. And then this became Dionysus, two-headed. And then in Greek, and then in Roman, it became Janus, which also sums to 331. And this is where the word January comes from. So this is the secret name of January is Janus. The secret name of Janus is Sampi, and Sampi's original name in Greek Egyptian is Serapis. So this means that at the end of the year on January 8th, after the 40-day Christmas holiday, they raise the Djed, thinking that it's going to restabilize the two poles are going to align, and the cosmos is going to be restabilized. So here we see Jed being raised, Dionysus being raised in Greek, and then modern people cutting down and raising a Christmas tree. So the Christmas tree is a version of Osiris turning into the Djed, or the Koak festival is what we now call Christmas. And Emperor Hadrian visited the Egyptians. He said all the Christians are Serapis worshippers. And there's Serapis. So here's an older version of this. We go through the alphabet. The 3 enads. Sampi becomes Janus. Janus goes back to the circle dot. And the circle dot goes back to A. But we're also missing the last letters of lotus. So the Samos Cup doesn't have the 28th letter. It just goes up to 900 and stops. But the Greeks had the 28th letter was the lotus, and that equals 1,000. So the way this is the dendrolites, and this gives a full picture of the alphabet cycle. So we see pre-flood here. This is A. Okay, so here we are. Pre-flood A is over here. And about, it's somewhere in January is where A is. It's not exactly aligned, but January 8th is when they raise the shed, and then you start hoeing over here. So A is over here, then we go B, G, it goes this way, all the way to N. So the flood starts at N when Sirius rises, and that's why the water's higher over here. That's right here. Sirius is seen, then the flood starts, and the waters rise. So we get Xi, O, P, Q, R, S, T, Upsilon, Phi, Xi, Psi, Omega, Sampi. So then right here, the jet gets raised, and then the cosmos is realigned. And so this is one lotus birthing out the sun, and this is another lotus birthing out the sun, and supposedly they're merging or something here, and that this old sun, the 365-day sun, gets merged with a new sun, and something like there's the 1,000 value, hey, and this gets reduced back down to, by modular 9 to 1 to its base, and then the thing starts over again, something like that. And at the bottom we see Ta making the golden egg of the sun, Hathor, Bet, birthing the new Horus. There's letter A holding up, Hathor Bet. There's Hathor Bet, pregnant with the new Horus. And then there's Horus as the 10,000 value sun as a bubble of light coming out of the lotus. So this is kind of like a 1,000. We go over here to the 1,000 value lotus, and then the new Horus child is born out as Harpocrates sucking his thumb. And then it goes to 100 tadpoles, 100,000, 1,000, 100,000, and a million is Ha. And then this mod 9 reduces back to 1. And we get the letter A. That completes the cycle. So that, okay, so now we're going to get to our last point here with regards to why there is, how this was passed along mathematically in terms of the shoe. Okay, so there's my shoe, which I ran a mile before making this video today. And I'm size 11, but it goes, with running shoes, it goes up to 16 finger digits. So what we have here is the mathematics that was reported by Aristotle. Aristotle said that math was invented by the Egyptians, and then he said that mathematics, the mathematicians had determined that the circumference of the earth, which is shown here, is equal to 400,000 stadia. And he didn't say exactly who did this, but it's been conjectured that it was Thales that did this. And Thales is the one that made the TO map. There's the Thales TO map. So Aristotle reported that, loosely translated, Egyptian mathematics had calculated that the circumference of the earth was 400,000 stadia. Now 1 stadia equals 600 feet. 600, this is 1 foot here, or 600 of these Greek feet. And stadia is where the word stadium comes from. So it has to do with, 600 has to do with the fact that is letter chi, the value of letter chi. So loosely it means that every night the Horus has to battle Set, or Osiris has to battle Set, or Ra has to battle Set, and there's a nightly battle that determines whether or not the sun's going to be reborn the next day. So here's a visual of this Horus battling the leg of Set in the star. There's Polaris, and this right here is the Egyptian version of this. What we call the Little Dipper, Egyptians called it the leg of Set. And American stadiums are only 300 feet now instead of 600. But the original Egyptian stadiums were 600 Greek feet. So here's what was reported to Aristotle. So C is equal to 400,000 stadia. That's this circumference. Now, someone else before me has determined, I guess about 100 years ago, that this is a cipher for iota, whose word value is 11111. Again, if you divide this by pi, you get the word value for Hermes, which is if you divide iota, 111 equals iota, you divide 111 by 3.14, you get Hermes, which is the Greek name for Thoth. And so 400,000 reverses to 360 times 111, and 360 is the word value of Omicron, or letter O. It means a micro O. So the word value for O is Omicron is 360. You multiply these two together, you get 400,000. And then 600 is the value of the cosmos. That's where these letters are written in on the X of the values here. And this is chi. So chi is value 600. So you multiply 360 times 1111 times 600, you get the circumference of the earth. And this is the actual value is in feet is 131 million feet. Now this is what was the Egyptians had calculated was 400,000, so it's 3 times higher than the actual value. And then, or no, let's see, it's 240 million, so it's about less than double. So it's close, but the Egyptians had calculated the Earth to 240 million feet, and then Eratosthenes in 2210A calculated 151 million feet. So that's off by 15%. So this is off by this is close, but half as much. So what this means is that the Egyptians had coded the circumference of the Earth in terms of the words that are coded into the alphabet. So the circumference of the Earth equals Omicron times iota times cosmos in feet. And then feet equals 16 digits, which by no coincidence is the 16th letter, where letter O is. And it's the 16th letter, has a word value of 600 or 360, which is omicron. Chi has the value of 600, which is right here. And then this also reduces to delta times 10 to the 5th. So delta is what bursts, or delta, and this would be, in modern terms, delta times the lightning bolt to the power of E. And here we see D is Bet's delta birthing the 5 apogomental children. And this gives us 5 squared gives the 25 Egyptian alphabet letters that Plato and Plutarch both talked about. So then we get E is this Osiris triple phallus. Now this is where it all comes together. So this means E Cylon, which means naked E, and there's the Psi right here. And it's the 5th letter. It has a word value of 865, and a secret name of epsilon is Edamon, which is where the word etymology comes from. So the point of all of this is that you can calculate, if you know the Edamon, you should be able to reduce the etymology of every Greek word back down to letter E. And then how this letter E was born from A, B, G, D. And how this is the perfect birth theorem, that G squared is 9 plus D squared is 16 equals 5 squared is 25. And how this all goes back to the cycle of the cosmos. And here's the Phoenician alphabet. One thing we want to point out here is that Phoenician stops at X, but the Greeks split. This is originally Chi. Sometimes you read about that Chi became in the Greek T. That's not correct. Chi was moved to 600 in Greek, and they added the new T here, which the Phoenicians didn't have. And also the Phoenician alphabet has 22 letters, and that corresponds to the first 22 nomes of, from here is 1, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 22. So this is where it stops, and this is called the Theban recension of the alphabet. This is where the Phoenician alphabet and the Jewish alphabet came from. And the reason they stopped here is that 22 divided by 7 equals pi. It's an approximation for 3.14. So the Old Testament of the Bible is Ivan Panini determined, is ciphered such that every chapter of the Old Testament is divisible exactly. The sum of all the letters of the words of the Old Testament is divisible by 7, which is the 7th nome. There's the meteoric iron. And then here's 3.14 in Egyptian. It's 111 plus the Hathor yoke plus 4 digits plus the ram horn spirals are. That's what the fractions would have looked like. Pi would have looked like in Egyptian. There's Biblos, is BIB is 14, and then Los is 300, LOS. And then again also 300 is Polon. The pole star. So it's difficult to say exactly what the key of the whole thing is, but a good rule of thumb is that if you could just remember that E is the root of etymology. So you should be able to track down the etymology of every word, English, going back to Greek, through the epsilon. And I think that is, let's see if we're missing anything here. Well, that covers the 3 enads of the Samos Cup. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something.